Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. And thank you very much for such a nice introductions. It's always a pleasure to participate in this type of event. And for us, it's a very good opportunity for the IMF in general and the IMF office in Armenia to use this venue to kind of share with the Armenian society what are our views, what are our concerns, what we know, what we don't know, and to get also reactions and questions that are going to be part also of our analysis and our assessment of the Armenian economy. So this type of event is important as a dialogue from me to you, but also from you to us. So this is why I think that in terms of the format, I'm going to propose that I have a presentation about 23 or something slides. So maybe I can tell the whole story maybe in 40 minutes or something a little bit more. And then we can open the floor for questions and to clarifications, to go deeper in some of the issues that you believe are important or you are concerned or whatever focus you want to take. I think that would be a good approach. The other thing that I wanted to say is that I have to apologize. I don't speak Armenian, so the presentation has to be in English, but we have a wonderful translator there that I hope is helping everybody. During my career at the fund, I make a lot of effort to learn other languages, but Armenia still is in my pending list. But I hope that that's not going to hamper communications today. So then, let me start with the presentations. Only a few words of introductions. This is a presentation it's about Armenia, basically. No? But now, given that we live in a global world, talking about any country, and especially a country like Armenia, small and very open and exposed to the shock originating in other parts, any assessment about this economy has to start by looking at what is going on in the global economy. So that's why I will start with what is going on in the global economy. We will go to a more focus on the region, closer to home, and then a little bit of Armenia, and some ideas about the medium term. So this is basically the 3 blocks of ideas that are going to be discussing today with you. First of all, quick overview, what is going on in the world according to our perspective, no? And also a little bit of explaining to you how we do this exercise. That is a very difficult one. Then we will look at Armenia outlook, how we see Armenia going, challenges, risks, etc. And then medium-term policy priorities, what we believe should be the focus moving forward. Okay, so as regards the global economy, this is a table that summarizes how we see the world right now. These are apparently only a bunch of numbers, but getting into this table is a major exercise that is conducted by the IMF because it's our mandate, it's our responsibility. But it's a very difficult exercise, and even if you see numbers there, I mean, there are a lot of assumptions, and there are a lot of people thinking about this projection all the time. It's difficult to put this type of vision together, but I think it's the best of the picture about the global economy available right now. How we see the global economy now is that after one of the major global crisis that the world has experienced in recent history, the global economy is still not fully recovering. I mean, there's some kind of delays in that recovery that we all are expecting and wishing to happen. So as you can see there the growth rate for different type of countries and the world. We see the world economy growing this year at 3.3. What that means is that number means a lot because at the beginning of the year, we thought that number could be closer to 3.7, 3.8. Remember that the global economy, the world economy in the past, before the crisis, was able to grow by 4-5%. So we are still below what the potential could be for the world, no? And this is a type of disappointment, no, for everybody. And the other characteristic that we can see in this table is that it's not only that the global economy is not recovering that strongly, it's also that the pace of recovering is very uneven. So there are countries or certain areas that are doing more or less okay. There are others that, however, are in trouble. So this kind of different speed is another concern, because that made the whole picture more complicated, you know, in terms of the assessment of the problems and the policy recommendation. So what is going on, you see here, is that the US is picking up, but still at 2.2 for 2014 is not a growth rate for the US economy. That is a tax factory I mean, first of all for the Americans, but also for the world, because the US economy is a major engine, no, for the rest of the world. It's the largest economy. So, but at least it's picking up, something that is good news. And actually, we see 2015 as a year that could make a difference and going to close to 3%. However, the euro area, still we believe that there are some good news there, but it's really very below what the euro area should do. And this is bad news for countries that are trading with the European Union a lot, like Armenia, but many other countries as well. Growth is sluggish in there, and this is another major concern. The other block that is very important is what we call emerging markets. And this is a very heterogeneous group of countries, includes from China to Russia to South Africa, Turkey, India, etc. They are, as a whole, they are not that important yet, but they are emerging. They have a lot of strength. So what the line in red is the oil price that have a lot of fluctuation. The last part of 2014 going down dramatically. Why? Well, there are many factors. An increase in the supply of oil by the US, much more larger than we anticipated. The US has put together new technology to get, not only the US, Canada, other countries, to get oil and gas from rocks, this fracking. I don't know if you have seen that in the newspaper. It's very interesting. So this supply is keeping prices low. What is good for those countries that have to buy petrol and, you know. But on the other hand, there is also some negative news here, that is the demand of oil also is not that strong, because China, the emerging markets, and even the European Union, they are kind of slowing down. So we have two factors: more supply, less demand, oil prices going down. And then we see some kind of increasing, because we see that the growth coming back, but you see that this kind of band that we put there in the chart is like how the projection could move. So there is a lot of uncertainty, unfortunately, about that. But the main message is that low oil prices, good news, but also a sign of weak global economy. Okay, so this is a kind of brief overview about what is going on in the world. So now let's see what happened in the region and in Armenia, and then let's focus also on what are the policies that we had to do to try to handle all of these problems and to help the Armenian economy to kind of overcome these problems. The region that we consider in our analysis of Armenia is what we call the Caucasus and Central Asia. This is the map of countries. It's a very heterogeneous group of countries, and we have to separate them in two groups. We always do that from the analytical purposes. Why? Because some countries, they produce oil and gas, and you see them, the ones that are more like in greenish: Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Azerbaijan. These countries, because they have this focus on hydrocarbon production, they have other problems, and they have also other advantages. They have plenty of resources, so they have different type of consideration. The focus today will be more on what we call the oil and gas importers. Those countries like Armenia, Georgia, Tajikistan, and the Kyrgyz Republic, that they had to import energy. And then they had to, there are different type of considerations. So we will be looking at all of these countries in general, and then I will make a specific consideration for Armenia. And then we will do, at the time of doing this exercise, I will look at different indicators, no, growth, inflation, the fiscal deficits, everything. We'll look at all of the elements. And to see how, what is common Armenia has with other countries, what is, why Armenia also is different sometimes, no? So what is going on in the region is that, unfortunately, growth is slowing as well as in Russia and as well as in the European Union. So this is, I think you can see that in the chart. In the chart that you have here on the left-hand side, you have seen in blue is the color that I'm going to use to picture the CCA countries that are exported, and the red is always like an average for the importing. No? So you will see that it's going down. But look at what happened with Russia. Russia is going down a lot. So the picture here on aggregate level is that growth is slowing in the region, in the two groups, but it's not slowing that much, and it still is around 5.5%. So it's good news. Growth still here is not that bad. The bad news is that 1 year ago, we have a much more optimistic projection for this region. We were thinking about 6.6. Last year when we made the presentation, that was the number that we had. So now we have still a kind of robust growth for the region, but lower than before, because all of the factors that I explained to you before are now playing a role and dragging growth down. In the case of Armenia, for Armenia, I'm going to use this pomegranate color. I think I like it very much. So this is Armenia. You see the European Union and Russia for a kind of long period. You see how Armenia growth, this is the growth rate of GDP, how follow the growth in Russia and the growth in the European Union. This is the crisis, when everything goes down. Then Armenia recovered very nicely. No, I think that after the crisis, and then it's stabilizing, still about others, but you see that it's being affected by this type of slowdown in the two major trading blocks. And why this is happening? Well, this is happening, first of all, because of the linkages with this other trading bloc. One of us is the European Union, but the other one is Russia. And I'm going to focus here in Russia because it's a little bit more worrisome than others. So here what we see is that Armenia, as the same as other countries in the region, they have very strong linkages with Russia. This chart here, with this red, yellow, and green color, is what we call a heat map. We love this kind of maps, economists. We have this kind of, I think it's very interesting, heat maps. Heat because it goes from red, very, very hot, to green, it's not that hot. No? So the red cells indicate certain, yeah, exactly. The linkage with Russia is very strong. So you will see that for Armenia, that is the first country, ARM, that is the acronym that we use, imports, remittances, and foreign direct investment, FDI, they, as when you put together the whole thing, represent more than 10% of GDP. As you know, remittances in Armenia are around 10% of GDP. And also, they are very, very strong from Russia. No? That's flows coming from Russia. So imports, remittances, FDI are coming from Russia or going to Russia are very important. Other countries like Kyrgyz Republic and Tajikistan as well, in the case of imports and remittances. As you can see, the oil exporting countries that are on the bottom, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, they are not that much related to Russia. Why? Because they have oil, they have gas, they are exporting, so they don't need to get that connected. But the countries that are more dependent, especially on the energy level, but also other, they are depending on Russia a lot. This is the case of Turkmenistan here. This is the red one is because Turkmenistan is selling some oil to Russia, but it's a kind of very specific case. So what happened, the reading of this chart is that Armenia is very exposed to Russia, but it's a historical reason, because I mean, there having trading with Russia for a long time. There are a lot of Armenians working there. And then because of that, when things slow down in Russia, there is an impact on Armenia. And then the other chart is a little bit of a summary of kind of an exercise that we conducted with the team in Washington to try to estimate what will be the impact if tomorrow there is a reduction in the growth rate of Russia by 1%. This kind of rule of thumb, no? So we did this exercise for the oil exporter and for the oil importer. So and then you can see that if we have a certain growth rate from Russia, let's assume 1%, no? This is the projection. If we change the projection to 0, or in reality that number from 1 change to 0, 1%, what will be the impact on the rate growth of those countries? The conclusion of the analysis is that for the oil exporter, that's the one here, the impact will be 0.3% percentage point. That will mean that they will need to change exactly from 3 to 2.7, 0.3. However, for the oil importers, and one of those countries is Armenia, this is an average, the impact will be much larger, like a 0.7, meaning that when there is a correction in the growth rate of Russia, automatically, on average, the growth rate of those countries is corrected by 0.7. 0.7 is a large number, it's almost 1. So the impact is important, and this is a concern. The channel, you can see there, different color, are basically trade, remittances, the red one, and the green one is like the risk aversion. When the risk aversion increase, and there is Russia has an increase in the premium, in the cost that Russia to borrow money in the market, then there is an impact also on growth and then on the countries that depends on Russia. So this is what happened as regards growth, but what happened as regards inflation? Inflation is a very important variable. When inflation is too high or too volatile, this is the worst for the result, especially for the more vulnerable. It's the worst tax on everybody, especially on the poor. So inflation is, although growth is slowing down, that inflation is increasing in almost all of the CCA countries except in Armenia, which is very interesting and is very good news. So here you can see in the chart on the left-hand side, inflation in the country, separating importing and exporting. You see that in average, well, it's very volatile. That's the first thing because of commodities and so on and so forth, and the exposure to international shock. But it's relatively high, no? I mean, it depends on country, but it's relatively high, around 6%. However, when we look at Armenia, and this is the other chart, you have headline inflation and core inflation. Core inflation is an inflation that in which we exclude the more volatile parts, food and etc. So inflation has certain peaks. You remember the increase in the food price in 2008-9, the increase in the energy price that took place in 2013. There are some peaks, but then inflation goes down again. So inflation expectations are, we say in our language, they are anchored. So there are increases, people understand the pressure, but they understand that it's temporary and inflation goes down. Actually now, in October was 2.2. That is a very good reading for inflation in Armenia. This is a very, very important development and very different from what other countries are doing. And what happened with the fiscal? The fiscal budget is a very important indicator that we also have to look at it. And let's see what happened in the region and what happened in Armenia. So the fiscal position, we say, are vulnerable. Why we say are vulnerable? Well, because the deficits are high, or the surplus, some countries have surplus, are shrinking, going down. Let's look at what happened here. In this chart, we have in blue the oil exporter country, in red the oil importing countries. And we have surplus and deficit. The surplus is positive, the deficit is negative. For the oil exporter, what is going on is that they have a surplus because they have a lot of oil revenues and plenty of resources, but shrinking. The deficit is, the surplus is going down. Why? Oil prices are going down. They're spending a lot. So they are eroding this type of kind of comfortable situation, what is worrisome. But let's focus on the oil importing country, that Armenia. What happened there is that there was some consolidation. Here you cannot see the whole thing because 2009 there was an increase in the deficit, but there was some consolidation that continued to 2012, and now the deficit is around 2%. It's kind of stabilizing. Stabilizing is good, but it's stabilizing at the level that still is not comfortable. No, so the country will need to make a little bit more effort. But what happened in Armenia? Armenia is kind of outlier, we say, no, kind of special case. Why? Look at what happened in Armenia. Here in this chart we have a lot of bars, but let me see if I can explain. On the superior part in green we have the capital budget of the project, the capital, actual and executed, and below we have the same for the deficit. You know, I think that in pink we have the projected deficit, and in kind of reddish we have the whatever happened at the end in the deficit. And look at what happened. There was a huge expansion in the deficit in 2009. That was the right thing to do because there was a crisis. So boom, the deficit has to increase to absorb that shock. And then there was a very important consolidation. No? So that was very good. However, in the last few years, what we have seen is that Armenia has continued to kind of consolidating in terms of the projected deficit, but the actual deficit, that is the green, the kind of red part, the darker, is always below the deficit. Why? Because the capital budget has not been executed as it should, for many reasons, and we can discuss that later. And it's nobody to blame. It's a very constellation of problems, and then we are working on that with the authorities. But this is, I mean, it's good in the sense that the fiscal deficit, the deficit is low, financial constraints are low. Armenia is in a good position, but it's also bad because this capital project needs to be implemented to support growth, to support job creation, and to support domestic demand. So that's why we say that in Armenia, fiscal position is not vulnerable, but for the wrong reason. It's for the wrong reason because the budget has not been executed as it should have been. Okay, next indicator that is very important to look at that when you look at the country's situation. What we call the external position. The external position is basically the current account balance. What is the gap between what a country is able to sell to the world and what the country needs to buy from the rest of the world. And then here the concern is that this deficit is, or this position, depending on country we will see, is also weakening. In the case of Armenia, it's a deficit. In the case of the oil importing country, there is a deficit, there is a gap. In the case of the oil exporter, it's a surplus, as in the fiscal, but also it's shrinking. Let's look at what happened in the chart here. The current account balances, this is as a percentage of GDP, always is as a percentage of GDP. For the oil exporter countries, they have a lot of oil, they sell oil to the rest of the world, they only need to buy whatever, some goods. So they always have a surplus, you see. I mean, there was a reduction in the surplus in 2009, but then they went back. But the bad news is that this surplus is going down. So these countries are able to sell a lot of oil, but they're spending too much, and then this surplus is getting eroded, but it's no good. And then for the oil importing countries, that is the red line, where Armenia is there in the average, what happened is that there is a deficit. The deficit increased a lot during the crisis. It has been an effort to consolidate, what is good news, but now it's stabilizing. So this effort has like kind of been discontinued or losing steam. And why this is happening, and when this is happening specifically in Armenia, what are the reasons? And the reason is that what is going on remittances and what is going on export. And this is a major concern for us and something that we are monitoring very closely. What is happening is that remittances, this is these two charts over there are the growth rate of remittances. For Armenia. For Armenia, this part of the slides in Armenia, we have remittances and we have export. Okay, in US dollar, we do the growth rate. And what is going on is that remittances, they have a very good growth rate in 2010 and 2011, for many reasons, probably also because of the Russian economy, the Olympic game in Sochi, I don't know, many reasons, and these remittances grew a lot, 2-digit. Usually they were like between 15-20%, no? This is this part. However, now they are continue to grow, but the growth has slowed a lot. So now we have the remittances continue to arrive to Armenia, but and the amount is slowing down the growth. So this is something to watch up. And the same with export. Export also, there was like a boom in the 10th and 11th, probably related also to mining projects, specific issues. Now, as exports are growing, it's not like they are completely stopped, but they are growing at much more moderate rates, around 5%. So this is something that we have to watch up and to work to kind of resuscitate that. That will be important. So as a result of this kind of development in the external sector, what is happening is that, and especially in other countries, not necessarily in Armenia, is that the buffers provided by international reserves are shrinking. What does that mean? That means that the international reserves that the central banks, they have in the balance sheet, and they can use to kind of confront international shocks, are like getting a little bit under pressure. This depends also on countries. So we have in this part of the slide, we have the blue. These are the exporting countries. They have a lot of reserve. The central bank of, I don't know, Kazakhstan, they have a lot of reserve. But look at what happened, that the reserve, we measure the reserve as the number of months of imports that the central bank could serve in a hypothetical case that there is a completely stop in the supply of dollar to the economy. So we measure that as months of import. This is a measure that we use at the IMF a lot. We believe that countries are in a good position when this number is 3, meaning the central bank has at least dollar to supply to importers to continue importing for 3 months. In an hypothetical case that there is no any kind of inflows of US dollar. Look, the exporting country, they are quite about this level, but it's flattening. So because they are spending too much. In the case of oil importers, Armenia is there, is very close to 3%. So it's like a little bit too close for our comfort. It should be much higher. The good news in the case of Armenia is that Armenia, in the last, after the crisis, basically, also, encouraged by us, I have to say, of the IMF, it's an indicator that we always look at very carefully, and also because of the support of many international organizations and so on and so forth, Armenia managed to have this level around between 4 and 5. It's hovering, fluctuating depending on the year, but it's around 4 and 5% of month of import. So we believe it's about what is considered the threshold, but still is something that to look at carefully. So, and then as a result of this development, what is going on, and especially, more here in the region, it's happening everywhere, we will see that, is that, well, the Russian economy is under pressure. There is a lot of capital outflows, so Russian taking money out of Russia, or foreign investor going out of Russia. And so the ruble, the exchange rate, ruble, US dollar, has been depreciating. The value of a US dollar in ruble has been increasing. This is the line. I always use this orange for Russia. So the ruble vis-a-vis the US dollar has been increasing, and especially this year after the summer, basically. And then what happened is that you could see the drams vis-a-vis the US dollar has to follow as well. To adjust to this shock is also moving in that directions. And then, this is not a specific phenomenon to Armenia. All of the currency in the world in different type of magnitude are depreciating because what happened in Russia, but also because what happened in other part of the world, especially in the US. The dollar is getting very strong. The dollar is, because the US economy is coming back. So the US dollar is getting stronger, so the euro is depreciating, The lari in Georgia is depreciating, the Turkey lira is depreciating, the pound is depreciating, everybody. So what we see here in this chart, the one that is on the other side, is this is an index. No, this first chart is the exchange rate. The other one is an index that is 100 in the beginning of November. So you can see that Russia going up, meaning that the value of ruble vis-a-vis $1 is increasing vis-a-vis the beginning of the month. And almost all of the currency with different type of fluctuation are also following suit. No? So you see the euro has a lot of fluctuation, but also is also depreciating vis-a-vis the dollar. The red one is the Armenian dram, and the blue one, or violet, is the lari in Georgia, also is adjusting. So this is a kind of a phenomenon that is taking place now in the world. And then, to finalize with this block of the presentation, the risk with this type of development, or I would say the concern, is what is going on the banking system. The banking system of countries is a sector that is always exposed to this type of shock, and when things go wrong in the financial sector, there are major spillover to the real economy. That's why it's important to have a look at what is going on there. The major risk in this region, you look at the whole picture, is dollarization. I mean, this is something that we know. Here you have a chart. I think it's very interesting that you have the percentage of deposits in the banking system that are in US dollar and the loan. So these are the two way of measuring dollarization. No? So, and then you can see the different countries in the world. You can see Armenia, Georgia, and also Latin America, LAC, Brazil. For instance, Brazil is no dollarized. No, so different countries have different type of dollarization. Most of our countries, or the regional country, and especially Armenia, are on the top, meaning that almost 70% of the loans in the banking system are denominated in US dollar, the same as deposit. What does that mean? That means that there is a possibility of mismatch, the people that have to pay a debt in rand when the loan is in US dollar, or the other way around, no? And then this is something that is a challenge, no, for the banking system. The good news in the case of Armenia is that, I mean, this is something that we know. So then there is a very strong supervision by the central bank, and there is a lot of like safeguards. No? So they are in position on banks on what are the safeguards, the liquidity ratio, and other type of levels of compliance with certain, the open position, for instance, of banks, no? How much US dollar they can have on the asset and the liability side. All of these constraints that we call macroprudential regulations are kind of minimizing these risks. No? It's like making the banking system more like safer. Okay, so now that we have this kind of broad picture of the Armenian economy, and yeah, I think I'm doing okay in the presentation. So let's take a stop of giving all of the challenges, what we believe should be the policy priorities for Armenia. No? So I'm sorry that I'm coming here only to tell you about problems, risks, vulnerabilities, and but I'm sorry, but this is part of my job. But then the good news is that, okay, there are problems, the situation is challenging, not only for Armenia, for many other countries, but there are policies that we can put together to navigate these difficult times. What are these policies? Well, first of all, we have the fiscal, the budget. No? So the first thing is that because growth is slowing down, for reasons that are sometimes are not, and I mean, it's no Armenian fault, it's happening outside. So something that we can do, and the authorities are doing now, is to have a temporary pause in the fiscal consolidation. So the deficits, we don't need to reduce the deficit for the time being, especially next year in 2015. That way is a way for the government to spend more and to support the economy, because there are no other sources of growth. The sources of growth, the traditional sources of growth, are like a slowdown. No? So then we have this pause in the consolidation, because Armenia has the support of a lot of international organizations. Armenia issued Eurobond in 2013, so the financial constraint is not there. There is a space to spend. So pause and space to spend, as long as this is put together in a kind of medium-term strategy. So this is a pause, but then as soon as things get better, the idea is to go back to the consolidation. But the other point that's very important, and I'm going to make a huge emphasis on that, is strengthening the execution of the budget, especially on the capital project, but in everything. So there is a budget, there are a lot of projects, good projects, with the support of financial organizations, international financial organizations, needs to be executed on time. And there are many problems, legal, technical, capacity, you name it, and to fix them and to get, to explain what is in the budget. And that would be a very good push to the economy. Then on the monetary and exchange rate policy, what we can do that? What we can do there? Well, because inflation is low, but it's very good, provide a very good favorable environment, and the fiscal, I don't have problem in the fiscal. I don't have a budget that is kind of constrained. So the monetary policy can remain neutral, meaning that the monetary policy can remain like providing cheap financing to the banking system. This is why, as you may remember, the central bank has been reducing the policy rate in the last few months, meaning that there is no constraint on that respect. Now the policy rate, I think, is 6 point something, 6 point something like that, Yeah, has been reduced, so no constraint, no need to tight the monetary policy to reduce this type of access to liquidity from the banking system. And the other element that is very important in monetary and the external policy is the exchange rate. As I explained before, because things are changing in the international environment, it's important that Armenia use the exchange rate as a policy tool. So that means that if the ruble per dollar depreciate, and that means that the people that send money to Armenia in rubles, they get less money in dollar, then you have to help them by increasing the amount of equivalent in drams by allowing this exchange rate to work as a buffer. So that's the way it operates. That's what we call exchange rate flexibility. In order to maintain the purchasing power of the remittances, as an example. The other thing is for exporter also, when there is this kind of big changing in the exchange rate in other countries, your trading partner, there is a kind of adjustment in other prices in order for exporter to continue operating. Could be also some impact on imports, meaning that, if there is some increase in the price of some imports, especially food, maybe the people are going to start buying more Armenian food, what is, by the way, is delicious. So I will do that. So when all of these prices have to change, then the exchange rate can help to mitigate this shock. And this is what we call to protect remittances, purchasing power, and export and growth. And then financial, that's the other element, tool that the authorities, the government has, that is strengthening the banking supervision. These macroprudential that I mentioned before are very important. The regulation to reduce NPL. NPL is the non-performing loans. When the economy slows down and growth goes down, there is a risk that some people may be underwater and they may not be able to pay back their loans. So you have to work together to refinance these loans, so to assess what is going on there, and to allow for this problem to be handled by the banking system. And then reduce dollarization to financial deepening. What that means, increasing the confidence in this case in local currency, in drams, to avoid all of this problem of mismatches with the exchange rate and so on and so forth. This is a very important point, and Armenia is very dollarized, but I worked before in other dollarized countries, in Latin America, even higher than here, and it's something that takes time, but it will happen naturally when people realize that, well, depending on who you are and which side of the equation you are, it's not necessary that you are safe by being in certain currency. You can also make a lot of money or do good business when you are on the other currency, but it takes a little bit of time to do that. Okay, so then I think that this is the kind of two main blocks that I wanted to present in terms of global economies and in terms of Armenia. Now I have a kind of short block at the end, maybe 10 minutes, and then I stop for the question. That this is an idea that I think is important because now there's a lot of concern at the fund in general. There are implications for Armenia, but for other countries, no? And the concern is the following: we are now in a situation where growth is slow, and this is not cyclical anymore. It seems to be that it's going to be here with us for a while. No, this is what our managing director, Madame Lagarde, she has been speaking about that, like a moderate growth in the world. And this is a concern because when that happens, it's also related to expectations, and then it's implied that maybe there are a lot of missed opportunities, and that could impact the potential to grow in countries for many reasons. No, like people decided not to study. Like, why? You're not going to get the job, so people quit their investment that people don't want to make because growth is not there. So this is a concern that this could translate into what we call a reduction in the potential to grow in the world in general. And this is a concern that we had to work together to overcome. And how we see that? We see that because at the fund, when we put together these exercises that I explained at the beginning, we always calculate also what we call the potential GDP growth for different countries, no? Because at some point, a country may be below potential for whatever reason, but the idea is for that country to go to its potential, no? So the potential GDP growth is something that we have been revising downward in the last few years a lot, no? And this is a concern, now especially look at what happened here. These bars in the chart, different colors represent different estimates of potential GDP for different vintages, no? For the 2003, 2007, 2008, 2014, 2015, 2019. Because the potential GDP growth is something that we project for a medium term, no? It's like a path that countries should follow, no? So what happened is that we have been systematically in the last few years cutting down this potential, no? Everywhere in the world. No, it's not like specific to this. And actually, in some countries, the potential is very low, no? Look at Latin America, no? But the message here for Armenia, for this region, is that the potential is very high, or we thought was very high in the CCA exporting and the CCI importing, and the cutting in the potential is being much more like dramatic than in other. Why? Because, well, we will see that. We believe that there are reforms that are not taking place. There are certain modernization that is not taking place, or the other way of looking at that, this economy remains still not very complex, not very diversified. This is what the other charts try to show. It's a kind of weird chart. Let me try to explain. This is an index of complexity of the economy that is computed by the Harvard University. It's a kind of index of how diverse and complex our economy. Economies are going to be more complex if they have more diversified structure, if they have a higher education for the population. They combine many factors. And then what happens is that you can see it's an index that goes from -3 to 3, and then most of the CCA countries are in the negative part. No, I mean, Armenia is not that negative, but it's still low. No, the idea would be to be close to 3. No, so anyway, so what I'm saying is that this potential is because countries in this region are not getting that complex. Complexity also comes with trade, comes with getting a lot of more foreign direct investor coming, tourism, etc. No, so this is a concern that we had to put in the agenda. And the other concern is that it's not only that potential GDP, maybe we are cutting it off, but also that growth, when it happened, because growth happens, so has not been that inclusive. This is another word that we are now using a lot to express this concern. What I mean inclusive? Inclusive that growth, 5%, 3%, whatever, is kind of is enjoyed by as many people as possible. The small and medium enterprises, the big enterprises, the workers, the professionals, everybody, as the people living in the village, the people living in Yerevan. No? This is what we call inclusive, because when growth is inclusive, is sustainable, because that gets more support, political support. And then when you want to put together new reform for the future, you can show that it's including everybody. So this inclusiveness is something that worries us, and we have to put that on our work agenda as well. And then how we measure lack of inclusiveness here? We have some index like the Gini, that is it's very standard index, you may be familiar with it, that measure inequality in the society. We look at inequality in different way. Income, that is the Gini in red, and the blue is the inequality in land, property or land. That's also it's important in certain countries where there are a lot of rural population and there are a lot of agriculture. We can see that in this case, CCA is there's some inequality. It's not the region with the largest inequality. Look at, for instance, Latin America. But still, is high. So this is something to be concerned about. But also, the other way of looking at a lack of inclusiveness is unemployment. Unemployment also is high in the CCA countries, even higher than in other regions, and especially focus on the youth. And this is also important because the youth are the ones that are generating the potential GDP for the future. So that's why it's important to look at this indicator. And then why we believe this is happening? Well, there are many reasons. The crisis, there are many factors, but one factor that we believe is that, and this is not only for this region, also affect to other emerging markets, is that there have been less reform that originally envisaged or originally projected. And this is a kind of, sometimes in this presentation, as you can see, I take indicator measured or computed by others. This is an indicator of structural reforms, an index. This is computed by the EBRD. They do that for this region. And they did that for 2010, and they did that for 2013. So we had 2 years to compare. So then they assign a number to different countries depending on the progress on structural reforms. It's a combination of many different indexes. So like doing business, there are many. So then when it's very interesting to see 2010 and 2013, because what we see is that, the oil exporter, the progress is lower than the oil importer. That's also the first thing that is interesting, because when you have a lot of money, countries are not incentivized to do reform. Mm-hmm. But also, the other thing is that, look at this, 2013 look like a little bit, it's not like but a little bit lower than 2010, and this is not good news. It should have been the other way around, 2013 should have been much higher. So maybe some reforms has not been implemented. There was a lot of ambition there, and that has not been materialized. And this is one of the reasons of the lack of inclusiveness in growth. And so the conclusion here, and this is the message, is that we need a new economic model, not only for Armenia, for the region. A new economic model meaning we have to do things in a different way to the way we have been doing things so far. And then the elements are growth has to be, this is a model that has to have or has to produce growth as high as possible, but as sustainable as possible. It doesn't make sense to grow a lot 1 year and then next year going to zero. Not sustainable, whatever, hopefully around the potential. Has to be diverse. Doesn't make sense only to have mining or only tourism, but as diverse as possible. Why? Because when things go wrong in one sector, the economy has another sector to kind of balance. So diversity is important. And then inclusive, like everybody can take part in whatever. This is very complicated, I know, but we have to try. And so then to try, what we put together here is like we believe at the medium-term policy priority for Armenia. This is not, I mean, I'm not exhausting here all of the things that Armenia should do for the medium term. There are many other reforms. Here, I'm going to talk about the priority that we see from our agenda, with Armenia. But this is a collective effort. There are other entities, other international organizations that are focusing on other aspects. But the first block is bolder structural reforms, meaning decisive, implemented structural reform with impact. They should cover everything: education, health, public services, everything. What we focus, because certain distribution of labor, with other international organizations, we focus on reforms that promote growth and improve governance in the country. So we have a very strong focus on tax administration. Why? Because we believe the budget needs resources to implement good policies, spending policy. Tax administration also to facilitate transparency, to make life kind of easier for the taxpayer. So there are many components there. Business climate, here we have different measures, actions on inspections, competitions, open sky policy, something that we have been fighting a lot, because the country needs to be more connected with the world. Energy is a critical element. The country needs a medium-term strategy to provide energy in a way that is sustainable and efficient. This is important for this potential GDP and for people to make business looking at the energy is not going to be a problem in the next 5 years, etc. Financial sector, always we have to look at that. Not only to have a financial sector that is sound, but also a financial sector that includes everybody, access to finance, the opportunity for everybody to get a loan for a start a business, connectivity, regulation, and etc. So these are the kind of areas in which we focus. Then another area in which we work and we encourage the authority is to have an integration with the world. Armenia needs to get better integrated with the world. This is critical to do this diversification that I mentioned before, to get an economy that is more complex. And that has to be done in which way? All of the regional opportunity, multilateral opportunity, and has to be explored by Armenia. And on the other hand, the other elements in which we work a lot is that these policies that I mentioned before has to be implemented in policy framework that are strong. What do I mean in policy framework? Meaning that the rule that the authorities follow to make decisions. And then we have on the fiscal, transparency, medium-term expenditure framework that are clear. Armenia has this tool, but could be improved. Program budgeting, there are also work on that. But I mean program budgeting, that when you have a spending program, you know what this money is for, and you can measure some kind of results at some point. This is critical for the people to understand what the government is doing with my money, So this is areas in which we are working with the authority as well. Monetary, the exchange rate flexibility that I explained before, as a shock absorber. There is a shock outside, so the country changed the exchange rate, or the market changed the exchange rate to absorb the shocks. And communication is important. The central bank to explain to people what is going on. This is because of this, because of that, and this is also very important. And we are also working with the authorities in that area. Okay, so in this kind of background, as maybe everybody knows, we have now a program with the authorities that remains valid in the sense that the strategy that is there, the fiscal policy, the monetary policy, the structural reform, remain valid, and it's a 3-year program. It was approved in March in 2014, and we are now implementing it, and it's on track. This is a little bit of the same idea, so I'm going to go fast here. The idea of this idea, I think that we are trying to convey this message that the focus should be, now there is a forthcoming membership of the Eurasian Economic Union, so try to get the best from there, but also continue working with the European Union, because the European Union is the largest trading partner of Armenia, so you cannot forget about that, and also involving other trading partners that you can imagine, that could be interesting for Armenia. So it has to be a comprehensive type of integration strategy. Well, this is about the exchange rate flexibility, only to show that Armenia, compared to other countries, is in the middle of a transition. It's a country that has a system that is still managed. It's normal for such a small open economy, and it's moving to kind of monetary frameworks that are much modern, like inflation targeting. Look at the other CCA countries are more like in this other part. Georgia is a little bit more advanced. They have inflation targeting, but also they have a little bit more flexible regime. The goal for Armenia to join that club eventually, other emerging markets are to have a much more dynamic economy with a much more flexible and much more modern framework, but this is underway. So, and then I'm concluding, okay? And then we open the floor for questions, because I'm sure you have to ask about the question. So, the conclusion is that growth is slowing down in Armenia, but also in the region. And basically, the main factor is Russia, unfortunately, the negative spillover that we call about Russia. But also because demand is weak in the country, and it's weak because, there are private sector's consideration, but also the public sector, the execution of the budget. For the other conclusion is that those countries that have fiscal space, and Armenia is one of those, because the deficit is not that high, then they could take a pause on the fiscal consolidation, and they can kind of improve spending and support the demand in the economy. And also the monetary policy could continue helping by maintaining a neutral stance. Also, everything in a kind of medium-term perspective, like explaining what is the path where the economy is going. Macroprudential has to be a strength, macroprudential for the banking system, as I mentioned before. The third conclusion of this presentation is that potential growth risk to weaken. That's a major concern, not only for Armenia, for the world. And we had to do that by implementing more reform, more ambitious, and that make growth inclusive, and also to improve the policy frameworks, making budget more transparent, for instance. So, and then at the end of the day, the final conclusion is that a new economic model is needed that is based on this structural reform, that to make growth sustainable, more inclusive, diverse. These are the few words that I would like you to keep in your mind after this presentation. And that's it. I think that these are the conclusions, and I've finished. Sorry. It took me a little bit more longer than I thought, but
Thank you very much, Teresa. Համեցեք հարցեր, կարծում եմ, որ շատ ունեք.
Lemo Ghazarian from Economic Department. You have shown economic growth perspectives for some groups. Advanced economies, China, et al. But what about the rest world?
Okay. Do you want to collect? Yeah, maybe a few questions. Yeah, and then we. Yeah.
Դուք խոսեցիք ջինի գործակցի մասին, հա, ես
Is Armenian?
Իզար Եթե կարելի է, եթե ունեք հաշվարկներ, կխնդրեի ներկայացնել Հայաստանում ինչպիսին է պատկերը, հա, մենք գիտենք, որ գերբևեռացման խնդիր կա Հայաստանում, եթե քննարկել եք այդ հարցերը, եւ խոսեցիք նաեւ ներառական աճի մասին, եթե ունեք մոտավորապես կանխատեսումներ, թե ասենք որ թվականին կարելի է հասնել այդ ցուցանիշին.
The decision in September last year, in 2013, that when the authorities announced this intention, we have been monitoring that very carefully, because they're having a lot of, unfortunately, uncertainty, because there's a lot of negotiation going on, what the final conditions of membership and so on and so forth. I think that now we know now what is going on, at least. We have a treaty, it's public, we are looking at it, it's really like more clear, what is the framework. And on the other hand, we also believe that on the side of the European Union, in the beginning, it was a surprise, no, because there was a certain kind of agenda in one direction, and there was sudden change to another direction. There was kind of confusion, but I think also on the European Union, my impression, from discussion with them, also there is a more clarity about what they are willing to do with Armenia. So the news or picture that is coming create opportunity for Armenia. Why? Because you have now this Eurasian Economic Union that has the elimination of custom clearance with Russia that could expedite trade with Russia. This is an opportunity for Armenian exporters that they know very well the Russian market to go there and to increase penetration. If they're importing now $300 million, why not $400 million? This is nothing from the Russian market. It would be a huge deal for Armenia, so this is an opportunity. The second is that this exclusion in the tariff, that is a very important item, because you know that the tariff in the Union are much higher, around 7-9%. Armenia, by joining the Union, in principle, was supposed to increase the tariff. And the tariff in Armenia are low, because Armenia is a very open economy. So that was a tension, there was a tension there. The treaty established a very large volume of exclusion for a long period of time for many products. That means that people that are now importing from Germany, for instance, machinery or whatever, they don't have to change and to import from another country or think about, because they can continue doing what they are doing. There are not going to be changes in the tariff. They can continue applying the Armenian tariff, whatever it is. This is very important because there are not going to be, we don't see